If you are reading up on anything gut health related, you've probably heard about prebiotics before. And you may have thought to yourself, what the heck are these things? And why do I need them for IBD? Well, today, Ashley and I are going to dive into prebiotics and why we want to have them to fuel our gut. So get excited because we're going to talk about some food-based approaches that we can add to our day to continue to work towards our gut health. So, Ashley, prebiotics, is there any place that you want to start first with them?
Yeah. So first thing is really distinguishing what a prebiotic is. You might have heard probiotics and prebiotics and symbiotics. What are they? So probiotics are things that you generally take, and you only get benefit from them as you take them, meaning the benefits from them go away once you stop. Prebiotics are things that we consume, which could be a food-based prebiotic, could be supplemental, and the impact of them is that you're consuming them to essentially feed up your microbes, the helpful microbes that actually produce benefits for us. And the cool thing about prebiotics is the benefits are longer term because you're feeding up the things that are already there.
And like they actually taste good.
Right. And a lot of these you're going to be like, what? That's a prebiotic? Count
Yeah,
me in.
yeah, exactly. So remember, everybody, prebiotics is a fuel for your gut microbes, so your gut bugs. Probiotics are live bacteria.
Yeah,
Remember
good.
that as we move through. But yeah, prebiotics are yummy things that we can ingest and also get benefit from. Ashley, some of the top benefits of prebiotics, not only do you get to eat them and enjoy them, but they can also be a big support for your gut microbiome, encouraging beneficial growth of bacteria. They have the potential to help reduce inflammation in the long run, potential to improve digestion, although it may not always seem like that at first. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. And they can also enhance nutrient absorption and support your immune system. So there's lots of reasons why we want to try our best to make sure that we're including some of these goodies in our week.
Yeah, and a lot of times when we think about eating, we think of, oh, I'm eating for myself, like I'm eating for carbohydrates or protein or antioxidants. But it actually boils down to, in terms of like gut health, you're actually eating for your microbes too. So the things that you eat can have a negative or positive effect on your long-term microbiome. And I might add, the research shows that impacts can be made in as little as 24 hours. That's a significant time period to act. That's very quick to actually start to see changes in the microbiome, which is kind of cool. And then what's happening at a deeper level is essentially your gut bacteria are consuming these things. So if we're talking about helpful gut bacteria like lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, faecalibacterium praenense, Akkermansia, all of those gut bugs that we want to be present that have benefits to us, a lot of the benefits boil down to the things that they produce when they consume the foods that we eat. So they might produce stuff like short chain fatty acids, or an example of that is butyrate. And the role of short chain fatty acids is they actually help with reducing inflammation, they help with the overall gut environment, they help with repair, including things like repairing the gut lining, which often gets damaged in IBD and other gut conditions.
So you can see why we're talking about them today and why we want to maybe demystify them a little bit because I think there can be some confusion around prebiotics. One of them, or one of the big confusing things, or the maybe I'll kind of label it like a problematic thing that people with IBD kind of face with prebiotics is that they feel that they're not able to get them into their diet, or if they do consume them, then they have symptoms. And it's not always necessarily a bad thing, although we can understand not wanting to have the symptoms, of course, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and if you've listened to any of our videos, you know, like a big part of what we do is helping guide people through ways of introducing things that are on their no way list and helping introduce them back slowly. and helping people expand their diet over the long term. So some of these things, if you're looking at some of this list and saying, oh my gosh, I could never do that because I might have symptoms, you're not alone. That's really common for the people that we work with, but know that those things can change over time. And if we go low and slow with introduction and start small, you can see big changes in the long haul. So let's dive into kind of our list here. Matcha, number one, is one of my favorites. Yes, that is the matcha that I actually created this year. And I created it because a lot of the matchas that I think are out on the market are not always super high quality or don't always taste very good. And a lot of times when it comes to anything food related or the kind of supplement category, there are not always proper testing to test for quality and also to test for other things that we don't know want to be in them. But matcha is actually very high in antioxidants, particularly catechin, and can help with improving your microbiota because it does have prebiotic benefits. So things like lactobacillus and Faecalibacterium, those tend to increase. Then there's this duality of getting the benefit of one, its prebiotic qualities, but also antioxidants, which will help with repair.
Which is exciting, right? Because this is so enjoyable for so many people. That's why I like the enjoyment aspect of prebiotics. Not only is it a hug and a mug, it is good for your gut.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I think my other favorite on this list is cacao or chocolate. Another like really nice treat to add, especially like if you can find cacao nibs or raw cacao, like and mix that into a hot cocoa. That's another great way.
Yeah.
Yes, delish.
Yeah. So for any of the Canadians listening, this is a Canadian brand, I believe. And I love putting this in my smoothies because it is that lovely chocolatey taste. Plus, you get a good chunk of fiber in here too, which is great.
This is not sponsored, by the way.
No, it's not.
We're just giving you ideas here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about you? What are some of your favorites?
Well, I definitely do like the cacao, but things that I use more frequently in my kitchen are onions and garlic. They go into almost everything that I make, I feel, for supper because it's just so flavorful and easy and inexpensive to add to my meals.
Yeah, it's really like it's kind of similar to salt in how much it can change a dish, right? Unsalted versus salted dish, she completely changes the flavor profile. Onion and garlic, same thing. Like it completely levels up a dish.
100%. And then I feel like other pantry staples that I always have too are oats and potatoes. So again, those are easy, like achievable ones that I feel. And what I mean by easy is easy to prepare, easy to find in the stores. Like this may be a little bit more difficult to find in the stores than oats and potatoes.
Yeah, those are definitely a lot easier to find. And then a lot of people don't think of potatoes as being a prebiotic food, but they are. They're rich in antioxidants, but also they have minerals if you're leaving the skin on, and they're rich in resistant starches. If you were to, especially if you cook and cool, you don't have to eat it cold, but when you cook and cool, a resistant starch content actually increases, so you get an additional benefit. And then I'll add to what you said about oats. There was a study, IBD, and they gave about a fourth cup of oat bran. And what they saw over the course of 4 weeks is they saw a 30% increase in fecal butyrate. So they took a stool sample and saw that butyrate increased with that introduction of oat bran. And again, butyrate is we want to increase butyrate because that's a sign of good gut health and a sign that you're getting a lot of the benefits from the foods that you're eating. So that is definitely one of my favorites to add in, especially if people are very symptomatic.
Hmm. And then some other heavy hitters, if you will. Apples are another good one, plantains, beans, and then artichokes. Oh, and almonds. Have we said almonds yet?
We haven't said almonds, but Almonds, there's a difference actually if you were to do blanched versus whole almond. So the whole almond, a lot of the benefits or the prebiotic benefits actually come from the skin being on the almond. So keep that in mind because blanched almonds would be different. And then artichoke. So artichoke's one of my other favorites, like a new favorite that I've started to really enjoy because you can do a really nice artichoke sauce if you do like I've done it like a canned artichoke to make it quicker, and then couple whole garlic pieces, and then a little bit of salt and olive oil makes a really good sauce. So easy to add.
It does sound easy to add. Achievable and easy and good for your gut. That's what we're after.
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk for a second about symptoms and how to navigate that piece with IBD because this is a big barrier or challenge for a lot of people, especially if you're dealing with a flare up.
I guess if we ever have someone that come to us and we say like, okay, let's slowly add some prebiotic rich foods into your day. How do you feel about garlic and onion? And someone says, "Oh, I can't eat those. They bother me." Are there any thoughts that initially come up for you when someone says that?
Well, a lot of times, even with malabsorption of something, let's say someone actually has like a malabsorptive issue, like maybe they're sensitive to some of the carbohydrate compounds in garlic and onion, a lot of that sort of symptom response people have has to do with the quantity. So that's always the starting point, is figuring out what quantity do you notice this in? Because is there room for like a small amount? Maybe, and if we know your kind of threshold, then we can know where to start with that. But also, it may not even be that. So sometimes it's the foods that we have with that food. Let's say they always had it on pizza or, something like that. Like there's a number of different things that if we dug a little deeper, we might find, and this has happened to me over and over in my IBD journey, is that I might have this idea of it being a trigger for me. But then when you dig deeper and you start to have a third party look at, what you're doing, you might find some trends that you didn't think was there. So it might not even be the garlic. It could be something else with that. So yeah, so that comes to mind. And then the other thing is just the basics of gut health and the basics of training your gut and improving your microbiome over time, is that what to trigger now might not always be a trigger. And we see this over and over again in our practice. And because we've been doing this for a while, we started to see this over and over again. So we actually created what we call our rainbow method, which is kind of like this process of taking people through and starting small. I'll give you an example, like broccoli. That's a common trigger for people, but broccoli sprouts are generally pretty tolerated. So maybe throwing that into a smoothie to start, then having it on a sandwich, then moving on to the different stages of introducing broccoli. So it might start with maybe even blended, and then it might start with chopped really finely and cooked. So there's different ways that we can modify. And over time, what you see as you improve the microbiome, as your inflammation comes down, all those things will actually improve your tolerance to something. And so your list of foods can go from only five safe foods, to eating without hardly any issue, if you give it a little bit of time. And of course, we're not advocating that you go off of any sort of treatment plan that you're already on, but if we layer in this nutrition component, it can make a big difference over time.
100%. So the big thing there for people listening is to not forget that it takes time to train your gut. That is what we want to do when it comes to introducing prebiotics, is slowly train it to get used to these new sources of fiber. With that being said, and kind of what Ashley alluded to as well, not only do we have to be mindful of the training piece, adding things slowly over time, but maybe taking a look at the way people eat as well. For example,
Good point. Yeah.
my husband who has IBD, he was experiencing a lot of indigestion, and seeing as I'm a dietitian and I know how quickly he eats and the larger portion he eats at supper, and I'm like, maybe you should try to eat slowly and maybe just like dial back your supper portion, add a larger afternoon snack, right? So not everything is all at once, and so your body has some time to digest foods and chew them properly. And guess what? His indigestion was so much better the
Oh,
next day, right? So
such a small thing that can make a big difference.
absolutely. Yeah. So we can't undermine those little things, because chewing and portion sizes and being mindful can play a big role in your gut as well. So lots to think of, but we got your back when it comes to that piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned chewing and in these smaller impacts that actually make a huge difference, because when you're chewing, you're actually producing more salivary amylase, which is helping to break down carbohydrate. Even just your sympathetic nervous system, if you're in a calmer state, they've shown in research your actions can actually change your emotional state a little bit too. Like if you're feeling anxiety, if you slow things down, like slow what you're doing, you actually see impacts in how you actually feel. And I think that's really important to think about, because we might not realize when we're in a kind of stress state on a regular basis due to our IBD or due to like how we're going to feel after mealtime. A lot of times we have fear around it. So it is important, I think even more so for someone with IBD to kind of slow down, check in with yourself, and yeah, start small and go slow with it all.
Absolutely. The hot tips on prebiotics for today.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. And if you're tuning in on the podcast, be sure to check out our YouTube. All right, everybody. See you next time.